You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 526, Night.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we peer through the darkness, fighting our way through obstacles and our own fears to examine an episode of Star Trek for its morals, meanings, and messages.
This week, Night. The one where, in space, nobody knows if it's night or day because it's always dark.
Kind of is. Yeah, I'll be right back with trivia in a moment, but first, Norman would like to tell all of you how to reach us.
Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X and Facebook at Mission Log Pod. While you're at it, leave us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember your comments can be used on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. And now, here's John Champion with this week's trivia.
I hope some illuminating trivia. We'll see. This episode, Night, was written by Brandon Braga and Joe Menosky, and here we are, back from the break after Season 4, and there have been some big changes. Jerry Taylor is officially gone as showrunner, and Brandon Braga has taken on that role. He and Joe crafted a story that was dark, both thematically and literally, taking Voyager to a place where there were no stars, no planets, nothing. Though Joe's original story idea had them finding a planet somewhere in that void with remnants of an ancient civilization. They abandoned that idea and went with the introduction of two new aliens duking it out in this one. It was directed by David Livingston. Welcome back to David, who is still the record holder for Trek directorial credits. The last one of his that we discussed was The Killing Game. All right, Norman, I've got some really deep trivia for you on this. All right, Captain Proton. Let us talk about our favorite holodeck scenario here. The research notes that came back from Joan Pierce research on May 21st, 1998, revealed a lot of discussion about Captain Proton. For those of you who don't know, especially back in the day, still happens. You have a script like this, it goes to a research company to make sure you're not infringing on copyright or saying something that maybe violates your own show's canon. They'll sometimes pick that up as well. But then you get back a list of items that maybe need another pass. Well, one thing is Joan Pierce research wanted to make sure that Voyager did not violate copyright with the robot design. So they mentioned the robot that appears in the Captain Proton simulation, but they did suggest if you're going to rent Robbie the Robot, go to Forrest Ackerman and get him to sign a release. Now, I don't know that Forey actually had the copyright to Robbie the Robot, but he did own one at the time, so there you go. The research company also acknowledged that the hero of the story strongly resembles Commando Cody, which was intentional. You know, they're doing a melange of a lot of vintage characters, and they said the name Dr. Chaotica resembles Doc Chaos. Obviously, that one did not change. And they found two people in real life named Connie Goodhart living in Colorado. But again, that did not change either. But there was one major note that did change, and that was the name of the lead character. Originally, Captain Proton was written as Captain Galaxy, but I have to share with you verbatim the full response that came from the research team here. Here you go. Item: The Adventures of Captain Galaxy. With great sorrow, we inform the company that there is a copyrighted film called Captain Galaxy. It appears to be an amateur film made in Michigan by a bunch of Trekkies who have even made their own set in a design which strangely resembles something from something first seen on national television in 1966. They are on the web if you want to see for yourselves, and then they include the URL. Research will be happy to check other suggestions. So, there was a Star Trek fan film called Captain Galaxy that came out prior to 1998 when this episode was developed. Research caught it. I'm really surprised that they caught it online as easily as they did. Now, here's the thing. It's 2024 as we're discussing it. It is gone. You cannot find it unless you use the Wayback Machine. So you can use the Wayback Machine. You can track this down. And just to clear up any confusion here about copyright versus non-copyright, it's Star Trek. They already own Star Trek. Yes, it is a Star Trek fan film, and it is a parody, and they are within their rights to do that. But they created an original character when they did so, and they called that original character Captain Galaxy, and they copyrighted that. So that's why we went from Captain Galaxy to Captain Proton. And one other fun note here, the scene with B'Elanna and Tom in the mess hall likely had them playing three-dimensional chess in the original draft. And we're not sure why that changed, since research actually pointed out that 3D chess is a Trek tradition, and there are several commercial versions available. All right, let's meet our guest stars this week. First up, we have Martin Rayner playing Dr. Chaotica. Now, Martin doesn't have a ton of on-screen credits, but like a lot of English actors, he got his start on the stage, and he has easily transitioned from there to TV and film and back again. He has appeared on stage in London, Chicago, New York, and picked up award nominations along the way. Early in his career, he appeared in the Blake Edwards comedy Victor Victoria, and since then, he shows up in the occasional TV guest star role or feature film. Most recently, his acclaimed performance as Sigmund Freud in Freud's Last Session was captured on film for an episode of Great Performances. Now, Martin will be back for 2 more appearances as Dr. Chaotica, but I'm a little surprised that there was no credit given to Kristen Turner, who played Constance Goodhart here and in an upcoming episode. She gets a good deal of screen time, and she lets out a great scream, which should not go unnoticed. The aliens who live in the dark are played by just one actor here, that's Steve Dennis. He's also an actor with a modest resume in film and TV, but he also has a theater background. Now, even without a huge number of credits, this episode marks the start of multiple appearances on Star Trek. He plays 2 aliens here, and then he'll appear no fewer than 3 more times in 3 other roles in a single season of Voyager, and we will catch him again on Enterprise. Finally, Ken McGee plays the polluting Emk. Ken is from Texas and got his start in entertainment in the 1970s. He appeared in feature films like The Shawshank Redemption and Seabiscuit, and one of my all-time favorites, The Jerk. His genre credits run pretty far. He appeared in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, Mork and Mindy, Third Rock from the Sun, and The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones. This is Ken's only Star Trek credit, and we lost him in 2015.
Did the universe get a shut-off notice for failing to pay the electric bill? Who turned out the lights?
Prologue. Tom Paris and Harry Kim are on the brink of stopping the sinister plans of the merciless Chaotica as Tom's Captain Proton holodeck simulation nears its climax. However, their enjoyment is abruptly interrupted by the Doctor, who is irritated by their holodeck time exceeding its limit. As they attempt to finish Captain Proton's story, sparks both fly, literally and figuratively, as Tom and the Doctor struggle with the holodeck's control panel, causing an overload on the hologrid. The disturbance triggers an alarm on the thinly staffed bridge where Commander Chakotay, accompanied by a lone con officer, learns of the situation and leaves Tom and Harry to deal with it themselves. Meanwhile, 7 of 9 arrives shortly afterwards with troubling findings from her astrometric scan. Voyager is surrounded by a vast emptiness with no detectable star systems for at least 2,500 light-years due to a localized theta radiation interference. Seven's analysis forces Chakotay to confront the grim reality of enduring such extreme and debilitating isolation for the next 2 years. She believes the crew can adapt and asks him if she should inform Captain Janeway of the results. Chakotay decides to inform Janeway himself. Act 1. Chakotay notes in his first officer's log that Voyager has been traveling for the last 2 months through a region dubbed the Void by the crew, devoid of planets, stars, or signs of life. Crossing this region without the chance to refuel or restock supplies has put the crew on edge as they stockpile energy reserves and their much-needed deuterium supply. During a meeting with the senior staff in the briefing room, Chakotay finds the captain conspicuously absent. B'Elanna reports, as in previous weeks, that there's nothing new to report, while Harry assures that all systems are operating normally. However, there is a bright spot in the briefing. Tuvok reports an increase in theta radiation in the area. Chakotay considers it may be worth investigating, if only to have something to do. Worried about overall crew morale, Chakotay hears from Neelix, who believes that setting up a temporary extra holodeck in Cargo Bay 2 and rotating crew assignments might help break the monotony. Neelix also points out how the captain's absence is impacting crew morale. When B'Elanna presses Chakotay on this point, he snaps at her, but immediately apologizes, citing the stress of the void is affecting everyone badly, including himself. Much later, in the middle of the night, if there is such a concept in the blackness of a void, Neelix suffers an anxiety attack and heads to the mess hall. There, he steps into the middle of a row between Tom and B'Elanna, who are sniping at each other, setting a terrible example for the crew. Their anxiety triggers another panic attack for Neelix, leading him to sickbay, where the doctor diagnosed him with nihilophobia, the fear of nothingness. Across the ship, the crew are dealing with their isolationism in various personal ways. Tuvok is meditating in astrometrics, and Seven is curious about the serenity he finds in meditation. Just then, a sensor alarm alerts them to a new theta radiation level, one that demands the captain's attention. However, as Chakotay briefs Janeway in the dark seclusion of her quarters, he can only encourage her to break free of her self-doubt and personal despair, as the crew needs her leadership. But the Void is a constant reminder of her choice to lead Voyager through the Delta Quadrant instead of using the Caretaker's platform to get them home, a decision that has haunted her for the last 4 years. Elsewhere on Voyager, Seven indulges Tom by participating in another Captain Proton story, while Harry treats Tuvok to a private clarinet concerto. But his performance is cut short as power fluctuations cascade through the ship, causing all of the lights to go out. Voyager is, in every possible way, in the dark. Act 2. Tuvok and Harry assess the situation as officers and crew scramble to duty, wearing wrist torches to navigate the near-pitch darkness. Even Tom manages to aim his 20th century flashlight in the holodeck at a nearby control panel, but Seven quickly diagnoses the problem. She orders Tom to reroute the holodeck's independent power system to jumpstart it, but no luck. They're stuck in glorious 20th century black and white. However, they're not alone. Just as Tom aims his torch at an alien being in full living color inside his program, the invader attacks Tom but is fended off by Seven, who uses Captain Proton's ray gun on the attacker after turning off the safety protocols. Elsewhere in the dark, Chakotay finds a terrified and incapacitated Neelix slumped on the floor next to a bulkhead. Assuring him that it's only a power loss, Chakotay helps him up, and they move together. Neelix's keen senses hone in on another intruder. As Chakotay's wrist torch spots a similar-looking alien that attacked Tom and Seven in the holodeck, the intruder lurches at Chakotay and Neelix, only to be stunned down by a very armed and determined Captain Janeway. On the bridge, Tuvok and Harry restore partial sensors, revealing a dampening field affecting Voyager from the Void. Tuvok orders Harry to fire 3 photon torpedoes to act as flares to literally see what they are dealing with in the darkness of the Void. The flares reveal 3 nearby ships, the likely source of the dampening field, and the home to the 17 intruders, several of whom have already attacked the crew. In engineering, Janeway and Chakotay set up a temporary command center as B'Elanna restores enough power for Tuvok to raise shields. Meanwhile, Seven escorts Tom to be treated by the EMH for what appears to be radiation burns after being attacked earlier in the holodeck. Seven rushes off to drag the incapacitated alien for the doctor to study as Voyager is once again bombarded by a dampening field. But this time, before they lose power, another alien ship fires on the 3 vessels surrounding Voyager and drives them away, for now. However, once visual communications are established, the supposed alien Samaritan demands compensation for the ordnance he used in saving Voyager. Act 3. Controller Emk of the Malon export vessel is beamed aboard Voyager but is kept isolated on the transporter pad due to high levels of theta radiation detected by Tuvok's scans. Emk advises Janeway to retreat, citing the presence of numerous hostile ships deeper in the void. Janeway, however, insists on continuing through the void to reach home. Emk proposes leading them to a specialized vortex for escape. Janeway questions Emk's presence in the void and is met with evasiveness, along with a demand for the alien prisoner held in sickbay in exchange for his assistance. Suspicious, Janeway has Tuvok beam Emk back to his ship while she investigates his story further. In the dimly lit sickbay, the doctor explains the alien's severe photosensitivity and terminal condition from theta radiation exposure. The alien admits to suspecting collusion between Voyager and the Malon, who poisoned the void with toxic waste. Janeway decides to return the dying alien to his people, who provide coordinates to gather more of their ships. Later, in a private meeting, Chakotay confides in Tuvok about Janeway's apparent inner struggle, reminiscent of past guilt from decisions affecting her crew. Concerned for her well-being, Chakotay seeks Tuvok's assistance in protecting Janeway from herself, if necessary. Upon reaching the coordinates, scans reveal all of the alien's people are dying from radiation poisoning caused by Emk's ship. The alien explains that the Malon's poisoning of their space, previously untouched for eons, has no discernible motive. Desperate for a solution, they request Janeway's help in closing the Malon's doorway into their space. As the alien is beamed away, he pleads one last time for Janeway's assistance. Act 4. Noxious green gases spew from vents on the Malon vessel. In Astrometrics, Captain Janeway watches with disgust as Seven reports the massive dumping of contaminated antimatter from the ship, while Chakotay adds that its holds are full of it. An aggravated Janeway hails Emk and demands to know why he's dumping toxic waste in the alien's space. Emk cavalierly explains that his people produce vast amounts of industrial waste daily, and the void serves as a convenient dumping ground. As Chakotay accuses him of disregarding the lives of the native species, Janeway proposes that Voyager will share its technology for purifying antimatter waste. She orders Chakotay and B'Elanna to escort Emk on a tour showing how they can help him convert his toxic payload to solve the problem for the Void's native species. However, after proving they can help him reduce waste production, Emk reveals his true intentions. Using Voyager's technology would disrupt his profitable waste export business. B'Elanna is furious, but despite Chakotay's attempts to reason with him, Emk remains adamant and is swiftly escorted off Voyager. In Janeway's quarters, Chakotay suggests exposing Emk's unethical activities and negotiating with the Malon homeworld, but Janeway doubts the Malon government's integrity and resolves to close the vortex to protect the native aliens, knowing it can only be done from inside the void. When confronted by her bridge crew after explaining her plan, Janeway is moved by their loyalty and formulates a new plan: disable Emk's ship, destroy the vortex from the inside, and seal it for good. Janeway accepts the plan, reassumes her position in the captain's seat, and orders the ship to red alert as Tom pilots Voyager towards the vortex. Act 5. They arrive, and as expected, the Malon ship awaits. Emk launches spatial charges, but Voyager evades them. Janeway orders a counterattack. Phasers and torpedoes strike the Malon ship's shields. Despite a nacelle rupture, they press on with only 47 seconds until the vortex. However, Emk lands a direct hit on the remaining nacelle, disabling the warp capability for their planned escape. With no choice, Janeway decides they'll ride the shockwave to safety. But Emk's ship blocks their path to the vortex. Chakotay commands Tuvok to prepare to fire. Suddenly, and by surprise, the native aliens join, weakening Emk's shields. Janeway orders to target his cargo hold, quipping, "Time to take out the garbage." Torpedoes obliterate his ship as Voyager rushes into the vortex. Inside, they release delayed charge torpedoes, collapsing the vortex as they advance. The shockwave propels them through to the other side, yet they remain distant from the void's edge. Janeway orders a forward view, revealing only darkness. As they journey on, anticipation fills the bridge. Tom spots a star, and navigational sensors awaken, signaling their return to normal space. Stars gradually fill in the view screen, bringing joy and relief to the crew. Janeway asks Harry what he sees, and with a smile, he reports a region with thousands of star systems. Janeway orders full speed ahead. Voyager sails on, back on course for home, in a universe ahead brimming with thousands of star systems. That, to Harry, looked pretty lively. The end.
Thank you for guiding us through that dark night. We appreciate it. You served as a beacon to all of us to get us to the other end, Norman. We really appreciate that. Well, let's get right into our observations. And I have to say that this is where my own bias creeps into reviewing and discussing an episode. I am just automatically conditioned to love everything in the teaser segment. The very idea that you could use the holodeck for a 1930s Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers style serial and in black and white, sign me up. If you ever were looking for me on Voyager or any other ship that had a holodeck, I would be there.
Yeah, it said for the sake of not having about 100 things to say about how much I loved the opening sequence, I did.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was done impeccably well.
Yeah.
Right?
They nailed it. They nailed
Even
it.
to the small dials on Captain Proton's jetpack, which, of course, is a throwback to, the Captain Rocket, Rocket Man and the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was perfection. One question, though, John.
Yeah.
When the Doctor appeared,
Yeah.
because he was upset that time was running over into his program,
Right.
would Chaotica see him in black and white or in color?
That is a good question. Now, I mean, I guess one of the rules about the holodeck is that the holodeck characters only ever respond in character. So there's nothing weird about somebody walking in a Starfleet uniform or whatever. They would just kind of play it as like, oh, you have interesting clothes. They wouldn't understand. So I wonder if Chaotica would understand that is color or black and white. It's a very good question.
Yeah.
Very, very good
curious.
question. Gotta say, we got a lot of this in the episode. That shot of Voyager in pitch black is very cool. People must have thought when they saw this like something was wrong with their TV, but every time we get those shots, it's just such a novel way to see that ship.
Because someone else wasn't controlling the horizontal or the vertical. This is what we're saying.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
Would it be possible for the computer to simulate stars on the view screen just for comfort's sake?
I was thinking about that. Or you want to have some kind of telemetry. Just something that shows this is where you've been, this is where you're going, this is how far. Like, we only really got that in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, well, the Kobayashi Maru sequence.
Yeah.
And then you had the telemetry around Regula.
Yeah.
So,
like, that's really helpful stuff. And it would be kind of nice to see that here, but I guess that's too expensive. When we get to that scene in the conference room, Neelix is the only one with good ideas and good sense, for that matter. And I think we'll have more on that later.
I do love Chakotay kind of biting off B'Elanna's head a little bit in this because she's pushing him and she knows better. And I think that he's like, look, I told you once, I really don't need to repeat myself, do I?
Yep.
I thought it was very realistic.
Yeah. She's got some heavy space sarcasm.
Heavy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Throughout the episode, a lot of good handheld and Steadicam photography, but especially when we go back into the bridge from the ready room, thought that was really, or from the, we're going from the ready room or from the conference room? Really nice looking stuff there, yeah. Have we seen Neelix's pajamas before?
I don't know, but I feel like I've made this pun before.
Okay.
Is that like the euphemism, the cat's pajamas?
Oh, he's like, oh, hey, that's so cool. That's the Neelix's pajamas.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair. We can keep using that. And Tom and B'Elanna bickering again. This is how we write couples on Star Trek, I guess.
That's really, really strange. Because I know that they're underneath the pretense of being under stress. But isn't that like when you lean on each other when you're in a relationship and not snipe at each other?
One
and
would
if they
hope.
do, that's problematic. And especially since most of the time we see them on screen, this is what they're doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I just felt that watching something like that just eats up a lot of screen time where it can be used somewhere else more effectively.
Agreed. Yeah. I really appreciated the Doctor's admission of his own existential dread in going into nothingness. Like that was, we can understand where Neelix is coming from. Neelix, after all, has died and come back. But then the Doctor kind of aligning with him, like, yeah, I get switched off. Literally. Yeah.
I was wondering, like, okay, so Tuvok was, like, his meditation was interesting enough for Seven to take notice. So in the downtime that they have, why not teach other people to do Vulcan meditation?
So many missed opportunities. I'm going to come back to that for sure. Yeah, because I feel like there are a lot of things that could happen. Love the triumphant return of the clarinet. Harry Kim playing that on the bridge. And I love the empty bridge, too. Like, they got to have fun with just some of the imagery in this episode, which was cool.
Didn't he kick up his legs and was playing with his feet up? He's playing the clarinet with his feet up, like he was probably at home or something.
Yeah. And I really just like the creepiness of everything losing power. Like, that is an effective thing already in a quiet ship out in the dark. However, the power loss doesn't make a lot of sense with the holodeck still functioning, but with no lights. So I understand 7 of 9 even says, independent systems are still running, like environmental and the holodeck. And I get it, the holodeck special, it's its own thing. But they even try to route power from the holodeck elsewhere, which they do not succeed in doing. But the holodeck is just photons and force fields anyway. So why it would lose light but still have the permanence of objects there doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
If the flashlight's a hologram, wouldn't they already know that the holodeck is operational because the flashlight's operational?
Right. See? There you go. There you go.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just watch these things.
Yeah, right. The night aliens, they don't really have a name here. We don't get to know them. They don't look good in bright light. But I felt like once we saw them, or saw the one in sickbay, and you could just see the face, I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty effective. And look, I know we're going to talk about Janeway because we have to in this episode, but I feel like there's this moment where just Janeway gets her groove back because now it's time to walk around with a phaser rifle. Is that all it takes?
Yeah, it would have been, I think, maybe just a little bit more interesting if someone said, intruders on board. And Janeway does not like intruders on board her ship. So instead of the blackout where she's like going around with a flashlight, she would have a rifle with a flashlight, right?
Sure.
We were discussing this prior to recording the show, and I really do love like the lavender gray T-shirt that Janeway was using in her quarters, and then later on Chakotay was wearing when he was helping Neelix through the hallway. But then Janeway has her jacket on, which I always thought was part of a one-piece suit, so that's new to me. And she has the comm badge on her T-shirt when she's in her quarters, but what, did she take the comm badge off of her T-shirt, put it on her jacket, and then run around with a phaser rifle? Right. And then Chakotay has his T-shirt on that's not tucked in, but hers was tucked in. There's just a lot of strangeness going on with the uniforms.
There is.
In a couple scenes. But I also thought that these were like the mock turtlenecks without the jackets, but they didn't have the pips on them, so they're just T-shirts.
Right. Yeah. I'm confused by that. Like, I like changing it up. I like having the T-shirt look, and I hope we get more of that. But it functionally, like, it didn't quite make sense. Like, there would have to be a lot of wardrobe changes before you do something important, like, chase down alien intruders. So
I'll tell you what, though. Still more sense. It made still more sense than the costume changes in Generations.
It did, yeah. We get some dramatic fireworks and interesting new ship designs as we meet the ships from our alien intruders. I thought that was very cool. And by the way, it seems like with Emk just standing in the same transporter room with him, like that would be dangerous. Did they raise a force field? Tuvok didn't say anything about that. It's like there's a lot of theta radiation. Okay, compensate. So you can just beam out radiation, I guess. But I would say put up a force field.
It was a little convoluted for sure, yeah, because I think that Emk was stuck in the biofilters that was trying to filter out the radiation, so technically. And I think that, didn't Janeway or Chakotay say erect a force field or something like that?
I kept going back to look for it. Maybe they did, and I just kept missing it. But, yeah.
But I do like the small details in Emp's isolation suit. So if you look at it closely, there's like bits of corrosion, bits of rust, and coupled with the way that his giant like trash heap of a ship looks, it looks like, they're really framing this guy to be like some type of garbage man.
Yeah, pretty much.
Of some type of, waste management supervisor.
And not the trustable kind. Yeah,
no,
they're really leaning into it here.
You needed a cigar.
Yeah, you did. It kind of had that voice already, And then what a great line. I'm finished here, and that's Malon for Get Out. Thought that was really good. By the way, why is Chakotay having his talk with Tuvok now about Janeway after Janeway has been out there helping already? She's been wielding a phaser, and she's been talking about putting something in her logbook. Like she's present at this point.
Yeah.
And now Chakotay and Tuvok are going to have the talk. But I'm glad they had it, but it seems like that was kind of out of place.
Yeah, I think it probably would have fit better when Chakotay left her quarters when she says, you're in charge of the crew morale now.
Yeah.
You're take care of everything else. I'm going to stay in here. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, I got to talk to somebody else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Again, going back to the Malon garbage truck or the sandcrawler, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
I love the shorthand of, Seven and Janeway and Chakotay looking at, the vehicle on the view screen, seeing, just bright green gaseous fumes, like spewing out of the vents in the side. I'm like, that's nice and economical for toxic, hazardous waste.
Totally works. Totally works. I do like how Janeway has not lost a step in her downtime because she's ready to blow something up. Like that is her plan. Blow something up. We know that Janeway is back. Nice bit of exposition here for anyone who doesn't remember Caretaker. I thought, look, if we're in it 5 seasons with Voyager, we've probably seen it all. But if you haven't, it nicely bookends, it nicely connects what we are now so far away from. So that was
it's a good refresher course for sure.
Yeah. And of course, Janeway threatens her own crew. I thought that was look, it is a joke, but it's kind of like kidding on the square. Like, wait, could she do that? Could she have us all hanged? We don't know. I love Seven of Nine's line, chances are relevant, we will succeed. Okay. All right. It's the opposite of Spock, if they're ever faced with something that seems dangerous, he'll give you all the odds of our odds of coming through this are, 5% or, whatever. Seven is just like, no, we will succeed. That's what we do.
It's like Worf in Take Me Out to the Holosuite. It's like death to the opposition.
Yeah, right. Just very straightforward. And by the way, Chakotay, this is the Chakotay that we've needed all along.
Yes.
I love this. I love that he is the way. And Janeway figures it out. Like, oh, you got to everybody. And you're challenging her orders, her plan here. That's the Chakotay that we need.
Now remember, she's the one who said the crew morale is in your hands. Mm-hmm. She gave him that permission to do that.
Yeah.
There is interesting line, though. So Janeway says to Chakotay, there's no one I trust more than you. And I'm glad that Tuvok isn't just around the corner. Because I'm pretty sure at one point in time she says, Tuvok, there's no one I trust more than you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do love that opening scene in Act 5 with Voyager kind of cruising through the spatial charges. They're reminding me of depth charges, in World War II, where you just see explosions, and of course, Voyager's kind of going through them, not really.
Well, of course, because Janeway gives the great strategic command order to Tom: evade them.
Well, yeah.
Oh, wait, now you tell him. Yeah,
it's like don't die. That's an order.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. If Janeway orders Voyager to hit Emp's ship with everything Voyager's got, when do they replenish the photon torpedoes for the next battle?
I read that as of this episode, we are past the point of how many expendable torpedoes actually have. Yeah.
Okay.
No more.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I think I mentioned this in my recap that the time to intercept the spatial vortex was 47 seconds.
Heck yeah, you did. Absolutely. Yeah. And you also, in the recap, had the quip, time to take out the garbage. All right. How are we with Janeway having a clever one-liner? I mean, are we going to get a lot of that? Are we going to get less of that? Was this too much? Was it too little? Is it just right? You know where to send us feedback. I'm having mixed feelings about it. Still, it felt right, but then watching it several more times, it was like, ooh, but does it?
Yeah.
And again, just, I love the shots in total darkness as they fly off,
How have we not made a Star Trek Into Darkness pun yet?
Star Trek Voyager Into Darkness? Yeah.
See?
Should have.
When Harry says, looks pretty lively, this is at the end of the episode, he looks at Seven, who is like right next to him. And I'm so thankful that the writers just let Harry have that moment.
Oh, yes.
Where Seven doesn't say something back to him or Tuvok doesn't say something back to him. And she kind of looks at him like, okay, your optimism's kind of growing on me.
Yeah. Look, it only took 5 seasons to get there. We finally let Harry have a moment.
It's a good thing there's no sound in space. If their exhaust is that bad, imagine what shape their muffler is in.
Well, it's night, or it's day. Maybe it's still night. We don't know. But you look out and it's it's just all blackness, no stars. Even if there are stars, you can't really tell if it's day. You can only tell if it's day if you're beamed down to a planet and their sun is up. So
we should play.
Yeah, you can pretty much be any time you want it to be on Voyager.
This reminds me of that bird, the nighttime daytime bird. Where it's one of those things where you like they voice over animals in this bird that he covers his face with his feathers and he says nighttime. Then he retracts his feathers and he says daytime. You ever seen that? Nighttime, daytime? Is that me?
I haven't. Okay. No.
Sorry for wasting anyone's time.
But if you find it, share it. Share it. You just share it with us. There's something about this that I think is so wonderfully unnerving. Like, if you think about it, the whole premise in Star Trek is so far removed from what we experience of space now. Basically, as far as we have sent humans out into space, it's to the moon and back. And at least at the moon, you can still look back and see the Earth. And that's an unnerving, weird, and life-altering thing. But the idea of ships that just go and they keep going and keep going and keep going, and you can't just easily turn around and get back home, that is an unnerving thing anyway. And it very closely replicates that feeling of early sailors who were exploring the world and did not know what was on the other side of that ocean. It's a dangerous thing, right? So I love that we recapture some of that here in this episode by just the unnerving sense of sameness. And I wish that we had addressed that before. It seems like doesn't it seem weird that it has taken us this long in Star Trek to get to a place where they just feel completely abandoned and a little stir-crazy and a bit alone, especially with Voyager? I had my own just like tiny little taste of that. Of course, you have the comfort of the ship around you, but being on a ship at night when there's a heavy cloud cover, so then there are no stars at all, and you look out and you can't see the difference. You can't see the horizon where the sky ends and the water begins. And it's weird. It's like just an unearthly feel. It's very, very strange as everything is black. And then I thought, okay, now imagine that in space for months. Months on end. Very disturbing. And then in steps Neelix with some great ideas. And barely anybody is paying attention to him until at least Chakotay says to Harry, like, make that happen with the holodeck. So I hope that happens. They had plenty of time to do it. Convert a cargo bay into a holodeck. Brilliant idea. How about this? Change up the duty roster. He gets kind of the dirty look from Tuvok. But yes, do that. How about using this time to get other crew members familiar with other parts of the ship? Doesn't the doctor still need people to help out in sickbay? I think so.
I am completely 100% on board with you. And I was thinking the exact same thing. I thought Neelix's ideas were great because that's what you do when you're kind of isolated, right? When you don't have... Well, first of all, I think it's actually probably was glossed over. I mean, I know Janeway mentioned it, for a brief moment. But she's like, it's. I wish I was, being attacked or chased or, pursued by the Borg or something exciting.
Which is a little weird.
But they did that, for 4 years. I would think like the crew would be like, you know what? We're safe for a while. Let's enjoy a little bit of the quietness where our hair isn't on fire, like either figuratively or literally sometimes, where we're not watching crewmen die or being treated by two people in sickbay, right? Let's train people. Let's cross-train people. People from engineering should know what's going on in security, or people in tactical should know what's going on and maybe learn how to cook for the crew or grow food.
Oh my God!
There's always something to do in downtime. Always, and it doesn't have to be work, and it doesn't have to be laborious. You're educating yourself. There are only 150 of you, right? You have to have triple, quadruple redundancies, and this is the best time to do it.
How about once again inviting 7 of 9 to lunch to hang out with the gang, because you haven't done that yet, except for like twice. So you got time to do it now.
It's like they lost the entire medical staff in Caretaker. And in 4 years, they only have a holographic doctor and a begrudgingly pseudo-nurse, right? That's their medical staff. Yeah. Why wouldn't you want to train people to be your relief and your redundancy? That to me was like, that's an easy no. That's a no-brainer to basically not make yourself bored.
Right.
Yeah. There's more than one duty shift, though, right?
Presumably, there has to be. People have to sleep at some point.
Yeah.
Right?
This is one of those weird missed opportunities for me where bring in kind of like the lower decks in a quiet episode like this. Mm-hmm. And I know that the main bridge crew got to get paid. They're on the credits. I get that. Mm-hmm. But if you want to really feel like how the captain's absence is making the crew feel, make it from the lower decks. Like, make it from characters like Vorik, or Sam Wildman, or Ayala, right?
Yes.
Or Baxter. And they're like, wow, we really need to see the captain walk around. What happened to her? Because the senior officers know what's going on. The lower deckers usually don't. And they're the ones that you got to worry about, because you don't want them spinning their wheels and daydreaming about things that may or may not be happening. That's what affects morale.
Yeah.
Right?
That would have been really cool. And it would have been an interesting way to shake up coming into the new season where, wait a minute, we're spending so much time on these other characters that we don't spend time with. What's up? Why are we doing that? That could have been cool. By the way, this is really not important to the story, but I am just going to throw it out there because there are a lot of people who listen to the show who are a lot smarter than I am when it comes to scientific principles. I'm just going to ask, the science behind this is questionable. The whole idea of being in a void quite this vast where you can't see anything. I mean, again, other people can explain it to me, but as far as I know, stars are really, really far away anyway. So a particular place where there are none seems unlikely. Like, you'd still be able to see stars and galaxies at a distance because, well, the galaxies are already outside of your own galaxy, and we can see some of them from here on Earth. I guess we'll just have to go with the idea that there's something else going on there. Of course, we introduced the idea of the theta radiation, so maybe that's messing up their visuals somehow, blocking out their sensors as well. It's a bit of a stretch, but I guess I'm willing to go along with that stretch to drive home the idea that being far away from home is being really far away from home. Mm-hmm. But that's not really germane to the story here. I think there are two really important things about the story that we should get into. And the first thing is Janeway. I'm really torn here about Janeway. And I think being torn about Janeway is leaning me more and more toward not buying this with Janeway. Because on the one hand, I like, from a production point of view, I really like the impetus for changing the character. Let's do something different, and let's explore some imperfection, some flaw, something that breaks her steely command. Because she is a great commander, even if she's threatened the lives of everybody on the ship before and maybe done things that are rash, she's still a reliable commander. So I don't know if we've earned here what she's going through. It's stuff that just kind of happens. Now, part of the fun conceit is that we are a few months away from the end of season 4, starting season 5. So, yes, in the audience's mind, time has passed. And this place that Janeway has gotten herself into is something that has evolved, right? And by the way, I mentioned before in the observations that I do appreciate that we get this replay of what happened 4 years ago in the explanation and in their discussion. But I guess I come down to this. Janeway knows better. She is a professional through and through. And she is somebody who I think would push herself and set an example no matter what. And I had to wonder, longing for the days of being under constant attack? That is a direct quote, by the way. That is some weird Jim Kirk speak right there that I think I don't mind having this other aspect to the character because I want a character like Janeway to be well-rounded. I want her to be multifaceted, and I want her to have these maybe dark places in her psyche. But I don't know if I bought it here, at least not the way that it played. What do you think?
In my opinion, and I know that this is probably not going to resonate well with a lot of people out there, and that's okay. That's why we do this. And this has to go with Star Trek. You know, in the tradition of Star Trek, the captain doesn't have the luxury of sulking. Right? Role play with me, John. All right. Please be Janeway, and I will be Chakotay.
Oh, okay. I love this scene. Okay. How did we end up here, Chakotay? Answer me.
We were faced with a difficult choice. We had the means to get home, but using it would have put innocent people at risk. So we decided to stay.
No. I decided to stay. I made the choice for everyone.
We're alive and well, and we've gathered enough data about this quadrant to keep Starfleet scientists busy for decades. Our mission's been a success.
The very same words I've been telling myself for the past 4 years, but then we hit this void, and I started to realize how empty those words sound.
So in this scene, the reason why I highlighted this scene, because in my opinion, at this moment, Chakotay is acting more like the captain than Janeway is.
Yep.
Yes, Janeway, you made the call. You had the rank and the privilege to make that call. Go all the way back to Caretaker, when B'Elanna says to Chakotay, who does she think she is? Chakotay says, she's the captain. It's her call. It's her decision. So for everyone under your command, that's on you, right? And your crew depends on you to stand by your decision for better or worse. Like, this is the tradition that we learned from Star Trek. I'm not talking about reality. I'm talking about the built-in canonical fantasy. The responsibility for being a captain, you don't have the luxury of choosing not to lead or not to engage with your crew, especially when crew morale is at stake, right? Leaders always lead. That's the role, without fail and without compromise. Now, for all of you out there who are understandably in disagreement with me, I want to clarify that I'm discussing the aspects of leadership and not the vulnerabilities that come with being a human being. Janeway has every right to hurt. She has every right to examine her own self-doubt, to second-guess herself, right? To examine herself in all the ways that her decisions can and probably will go wrong, right? We've seen that in every captain of Star Trek up to this point. I don't begrudge any captain that, any leader that, right? I mean, this tradition goes all the way back to Pike's most famous scene in The Cage. When Dr. Boyce says, Chris, you set standards for yourself no one could meet. You treat everyone on board like a human being except yourself. And now you're tired, and you bet I'm tired. I love it when he snaps back at me. You bet I'm tired. You bet.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being responsible for 203 lives. You guys know the rest, right? That's the weight of command. And then later on, Janeway says, I made an error in judgment, Chakotay. It was short-sighted, it was selfish, and now we're all paying for my mistake. Yes, it was short-sighted, and it was perhaps a mistake. But that's your decision that you made, right? And you made it as the best decision based on your judgment at the time, right? The one line, though, that really, it just pushed back on my expectations of a captain. is when she said to Chakotay, "I'll leave the shipboard morale in your capable hands." That's not how this works. You're the captain.
Yeah.
Right? And the crew's morale and well-being will always be your responsibility. You have to find the way out. You got him into it. You got to get him out of it. And there are people that believe that they can until they can't and don't want to. I'm not saying that's the case for Janeway. I'm just saying that leadership is probably one of the most misunderstood facets of responsibility in life.
I think one of the things we're missing here is we don't have the lead up to this. We don't have the hints, the clues that we can look at in seasons 2, 3, and 4 to really see this grow and see how it affects Janeway's ability to connect with the crew. Because one of the things that I love about Janeway in season 4 is that once you get 7 of 9 on board, yes, they butt heads. Yes, there are strange decisions that are made, but you can also tell that there is this familial thing that Janeway has with her crew, where even if the command decisions are hard, Janeway is not somebody who leaves the family behind. She's not somebody who just leaves them wondering where she is and do they even have that connection anymore. So that's partly what makes this hard to buy. And I'm glad that you pointed out the way that you did, that, yeah, people are certainly entitled to this kind of issue. People are entitled to this kind of concern and these kinds of maybe cracks in the armor. But as the captain of a starship in this particular scenario, you don't have that luxury, as you say.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that the writers chose to go this direction with Janeway in season 5 in the very first episode, because it puts Janeway as a character in a very vulnerable position, easily to be criticized, and especially by a certain segment of the fandom that still exists from then to today, probably even before that. Well, they'll take a look at the first female captain, that to head a series and say, look, she can't cut it. That's not what this is about.
Right.
It's just that I completely agree that it wasn't earned for her to come to this low point, in her life and her career. And if that was established earlier on, then we would have gotten more of the gravitas of Tuvok's story of when she had that first encounter where she lost crewmen, and she's felt guilt about that ever since. So that guilt compounded on this guilt, it started to eat away at her. Understandably so. But if you just put it in there as just random element just to make drama happen, then it doesn't work.
Yeah. But see, that's always the problem when you do a thing like that, is when you introduce the story that is something that refers to a character's past, who knows how long ago, 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, but you've never heard anything about it at all. But now you've got a couple of characters and one has to share this story about somebody else. It feels so just tailor-made for the scene rather than really in a true way informing the character. And that is not a slight on the way the story was told. That's not a slight even on the inspiration that the writers here had to do something like that. It's one of those like damned if you do, damned if you don't. You have to get across this story to at least give some justification to why the character is the way that they are now. But unfortunately for TV, it feels very manufactured.
If there are no stars on the main view screen, put something on there. Anything. Flying toasters maybe.
All right, Norman, we have not gone gently into that good night. In fact, we have wrestled with many of the ideas that are presented here in the episode. But at the end of the day, as we go into the nighttime of this podcast, we ask ourselves if the episode holds up and what we may have learned in terms of morals, meanings, messages. So I will turn the first question over to you about whether or not the episode holds up. What do you think?
Well, for me, it's an interesting thing. I'm actually jumping from this segment to the next segment a bit because the reason why I think it holds up, at least in my opinion, is because of what I found in morals, meanings, and messages. And I'll explain that a little bit later, after we talk about does this hold up. Because there's a huge social issue. And if there's one thing that Star Trek has always been known for traditionally, it's bringing social issues through science fiction to the understanding of the general viewing public. And I think that that's why this holds up for the most part, right? So the framework of the crew being literally bored into depression. Or at least that's the understanding that we're getting from the narrative. So after surviving almost 4 years of being hounded and attacked and almost assimilated by the Borg or wiped out by 8472 or surviving countless threats of Janeway blowing up the ship, I think, and we discussed this a little bit in discussion, but I do think that this episode lost an opportunity for the crew to focus on themselves.
Yes.
And focus on their own self-improvement. Whether it's B'Elanna and Tom actually working on their relationship issues, of which was probably the most interaction that we saw between the two of them in this episode. A fight. Or Neelix being taught by Tuvok to meditate and exercise better self-control over his anxiety. Right?
Yeah.
Because they're always paired together. They're always at odds. But now you take the duty out of their lives and focus on the personal in their lives, and they become richer and more flushed out characters. Or maybe, I don't know, Chakotay, we did bring up, and he has made incredible strides in the last few episodes, showing how capable of a first officer and a trusted friend he really is. And maybe that's why Janeway made that comment about, you take care of the crew morale, I'll stay here and, not. I think that there could have been better use of the time in the story focusing on the positive aspects of this kind of forced isolation rather than the obvious. We're in the blackness and silence of space. What are we going to do? There's time to do a lot of things. They just chose to go this route with the narrative. You can analyze all the data and all the alien information that you've collected.
Sure.
You can actually create things like our versions of TED Talks in the future, briefings, PowerPoint presentations, study of alien languages, things that you can actually focus on when you're not being chased to death by aliens.
Right.
Or your ship being constantly risked of exploding somewhere, right? Or watching friends die or that kind of thing. Yes, I understand that there will be some situations where you go stir crazy in isolation, and this episode obviously hits differently after COVID. But I think that they could have pivoted differently to, again, a more positive message. But that's not this story. That's just my rambling of what I wanted to see. Here's the one thing, though, that you and I just talked about that's pretty in-depth in discussion. The one thing that I really felt that wasn't right in this episode is this unearned shift in Janeway's character arc. Aside from Tuvok saying that she's been guilt-ridden from her past, from the shuttle incident that haunted her, none of that really has been explained. And all of a sudden it comes to bear here. And it just seems like it was drama for drama's sake. And there are good elements here.
Yeah.
But it's just, they all appeared like as all of a sudden. Let's just throw all of this drama in an episode that we don't really kind of quite get because we haven't really seen it before. And does it make for a good episode? It's entertaining, sure, but it doesn't really do anything to really further the characters because they kind of come out of nowhere, right? These elements.
Yeah, you and I are so close on this. And again, it's a good thing we don't read each other's notes. I feel like for a season opener, there's just so much anticipation and so much time off to truly craft a great episode. And I feel like this one just didn't quite get polished to the extent that it should have. Nothing works but holodecks work, and the captain has just kind of disappeared, and there's all this downtime, but people are just bored. I give the episode an A for effort because they're toying with some new ideas here, but in execution, it's more like a C, maybe even a C minus. I think just for a show that has been up and running very well for 4 seasons, and you have these very well-defined characters, yes, stretch those characters. Yes, let's explore some new facets to them. But those things have to feel natural. They have to feel earned. And I don't think that I got that here. I think any individual element of this story could have been explored in a very cool way. I love this idea of this void out in space. And by the way, if we're talking about Janeway kind of, losing her confidence in that, this is the same Janeway who looked ahead at 7,000 years of travel. 70 years of travel to cover 70,000 light years. My bad. So, 70 years worth of travel. But then we get to a void that's going to take us, several months, maybe a couple of years at worst. Okay. We can do this because we've done all the other stuff. So I find it a little bit hard to believe. I like the story going on with our alien component here. Also could have been further developed. So any one of these would have worked. It just seems strange that these are all put together for a season opener instead of really earning these moments over time. We have the elements. We've got unique aliens. We have this ecological story. We have a truly creepy area in space. And we have time wearing down our crew. These are all things that I want to explore in possibly many episodes, but I feel like we only got this cursory glance at it here. And especially with Janeway, I feel like they did her wrong. And the idea of losing her confidence is wonderful, but it's just sort of resolved as quickly as it's introduced, and I don't feel like in a very satisfying way. So I can't say overall that in execution the story holds up, but I think you and I are about to find ourselves in a similar place about the moral meaning message holding up. So what have you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier on that when Star Trek does what Star Trek is traditionally known to do, it brings a socially conscious issue and tells a lesson or tries to convey a lesson, through the guise of a science fiction story. And once they got to the void, and once we understood what was going on, and once Janeway and Chakotay figure out that Emk is dumping toxic waste from his ship into the void because there's only one life form there, and who cares anyway, right? I mean, even Chakotay says, how convenient for you, a spatial vortex in the middle of nowhere, far away from your own system, out of sight, out of mind. Problem is, somebody lives here. This is literally offshore dumping and capitalism destroying an ecosystem. Plain and simple. You can't even argue it. Right? That's exactly what's going on. And how do you figure capitalism into this situation? Because of what Emk said later on. He said, this is an ingenious design, using the plasma manifolds to be able to convert the antimatter. This would solve a lot of problems in my world. Unfortunately, it would also put me out of business. Chakotay says, sorry, and Emk goes, your technology would throw the waste export industry into chaos. Before long, I'd be obsolete. Keep your solution. That's what's happening here. You have the opportunity for the right people to do the right thing at the right time and giving that opportunity to a system that doesn't want it, right? Or if they did want the technology, they would take the technology and pervert it to their self-serving reasons for their own end. This is exactly what capitalism does. It doesn't operate in the way that you think it does. Advancing the means of control over production, which is what B'Elanna was going to give him when they were in engineering, it doesn't improve the situation of the exploitation. It only improves the situation for the bottom line because you create a new production model and you create more suffering and you create more waste because it drives up profits. So that's what technology does. This could not be more clearly illustrated with what Emk looks like you pointed out, John, what his ship looks like and what he's doing in terms of a non-conscious approach to even negotiating a possibility.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is about as in-your-face of a moral meaning or message that an episode can make. I haven't seen it this deliberate and this blatantly obvious, in a Star Trek episode in a long time.
Yeah, I kind of love it for that. It's really nice to see Star Trek doing this bit of advocacy that is really, as you just said, in your face. Emk is really pathetic. He lacks the vision. He lacks the creativity to see that you could actually do right by doing good. You could do the difficult thing, but it would actually be the good thing to the benefit of many. And it's funny, you and I just kept writing down very similar words, and my first note was capitalism rears its ugly head, literally. That is EMC, the ugly head of capitalism.
And sorry, John, to interrupt you, but this is how obvious it is. I didn't look at your notes. You didn't look at my notes. We wrote down the most obvious thing that we saw in this episode.
We did, yeah. And by the way, yes, there are many great threads to follow in this episode. I think we can continue to have this conversation about Janeway and the change in her character, and about how the crew reacts to this situation. Those are all fantastic topics. I think when it comes down to the moral meaning message, the three big M's here, that's really what we're looking at. Along comes Emp, and he is impressed by Voyager's technology, and here's the crew offering to help him and his whole planet get up to speed. It would, quote, solve a lot of problems. That's what Emp says. But it would put him out of business, and anyone else who is in the waste export industry. And that is incredibly short-sighted, to not see the necessity of doing what is right. But here we are, and I can't think of a more apt parallel to today, or even a generation ago, or maybe even the one before that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Star Trek IV told us to save the whales. Next Generation Force of Nature told us to monitor the environmental impact of our own ships. Now on Voyager, we've got as clear a message as possible about the residual effects of pollution and environmental destruction. But the pushback is always about personal gain. It's about profit margin. And I wonder what the Ferengi would have made of the Malon. I mean, surely they could have seen that it doesn't make sense to pollute your own backyard and create enemies in the process. The depressing part of this is that Emk represents the attitude that I hear over and over again. And I don't care what cause you pick. Pick your political cause of choice. Could be the environment, could be something else. But the arguments that stand in the way of really beneficial change boil down to two things. One, making a radical change is too hard. And two, making a radical change is too expensive. For whom? For the one who is profiting right now. Those less fortunate, those poorer or less politically powerful, or those who will deal with the consequences in 50 or 100 years, they can all be damned as far as Emk and his contemporary counterparts are concerned. It's episodes like this that I really wish we had progressed to that Star Trek future where we could all agree that doing the difficult thing is sometimes the right thing.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows in the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Drone.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shadwell, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi. I think we finally found out what happens when a ship in Star Trek is hauled away as garbage, and it's not good. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.